Welcome to the EarthWorks Podcast, where our team will share the jargon of carbon with many of the turf friends we've met over the past 35 years.
Hey, everybody, this is Kevin Hicks with another EarthWorks Podcast. Kind of excited about this one. I'm going to introduce Eric Blanton and Grant McKnight with DuraEdge. I know a lot of you guys are in golf and may not know what the heck DuraEdge is, but if you spend any time watching baseball games, they are the guys that kind of are dominating the infield dirt mix, and now a different product we're going to talk about here in a little bit. But guys, thanks so much for joining me. I've got a few questions for you that hopefully will shed some light on what you do and kind of the origin story of the company. But I want to start by Eric and I know each other through a mutual friend, actually a former assistant of mine who took over for me when I left the Coeur d'Alene Resort, and they've been friends since grade school. So maybe since I know you a little bit better, Eric, and we were stranded in the Sky Harbor Airport on Friday. Maybe tell me a little bit about your backstory and how you got into this business and with the company you're with now.
Yeah, so I spent 15 years on the professional baseball side, managing fields from major leagues to AA to AAA. It was, in 2015, it was just time to move on, find something else to do. And so I was working in construction, building athletic fields and some landscape construction. And then and I've known Grant for 25-ish years now, okay. when DuraEdge was just in its infancy stage, and we were always in good contact with each other. And he said he needed to start doing more out west, and I was out west and looking for a new opportunity, and it just kind of came to nice fruition, and been with DuraEdge for the last three and a half years now.
Okay. And Grant McKnight, you're one of the principals of the company, right? Did you start it?
Yeah, I'm the founder.
You're the man.
I started DuraEdge Products, what is now DuraEdge Products, in 1999. Okay. It was founded ironically as a root zone company called Natural Sand Company. So my roots go back to father and grandfather coal miners in Western Pennsylvania. I've always been around equipment, grown up digging things out of the ground, if you will, and when I graduated from college in the early 90s, I went to work for my father, and we had a construction materials business, a sand and gravel business specifically. Okay. And when I realized I wasn't going to be in the commodity, or didn't like the commodity nature of that business, we had sand, so I learned a little bit about root zones. I'm self-taught. I have a business degree, don't have any soils background, if you will. But so in 1999, I founded Natural Sand Company, and we went out as a golf course root zone top dressing company just in Western Pennsylvania. Okay. I mean, I never would have thought all these years later we'd be back in it again. But we're kind of come full circle as a company. But I met Eric in 2001. I went to my very first SFMA in Tampa.
Okay.
And was ironically trying to sell a root zone to the Pittsburgh Steelers at the new Heinz Field facility. Mm-hmm. And I went out and I met Larry DeVito and Mike Flowers and Eric Blanton, and I have no one in this industry, literally no one. And I ended up spending most of the weekend with them. So, Eric and I do go back 25 years. I mean, right. DuraEdge wasn't even DuraEdge when I met him. And so, he's been a dear friend for a long time. And, I've met a lot of great people in this industry. It's been unbelievable. And so it's been, great to be able to carry on relationships and find opportunities for people to come and join this organization, because as things get bigger and bigger across the country, you need more and more high quality people. So sure. Eric has certainly been there for me, but that's a little bit about our background.
So is that root zone product or company still around, or is that something that you've moved on from?
Well, yeah, Natural Sand Company. So I have 7 companies now. The DuraEdge, we're actually in the process of rebranding some things. But so it started as Natural Sand Company. Okay. Very early on in 2001, 2002, I was approached about making infield mix in Pittsburgh.
Hmm.
I had a salesman for a distribution company in Pittsburgh that came to me at a trade show and said, "You look like an enterprising young guy." He said, "I sell to high schools and we need a good infield mix." And I said, "Do you mean the dirt that the infielders play on?" And he said, "Yeah." And I was a swimmer all my whole entire life and all through college. And I quit playing baseball when I was 12, so I literally knew nothing about what he was talking about. But I started into the business, kind of realized that Major League Baseball didn't have a lot of standards for what they were doing, and so I just sat down and started, worked with some groundskeepers to develop some mixes that would work for that. And I got away from the root zone business and the golf business altogether, just
Okay.
sort of left it. And that business was called Natural Sand Company. We remained Natural Sand Company until May of 2012, whenever, the infield had just taken off and natural sand just wasn't a really good description for a clay-based product.
Sure.
So
Sure.
I sat down with a bunch of groundskeepers again, and we named the company DuraEdge. And it comes from the fact that the product's durable and it holds edges are really important in baseball.
Yeah.
That transition. So that's kind of where it came. But the company still exists. Natural Sand Company exists. It's a holding company now, holds mining licenses and reserves for the clay mine, but it's not an operating company from a marketing perspective anymore.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. So Eric, had you always been in baseball or were you also football?
Yeah. No, I was always baseball.
Okay.
Yeah. Just that was my background. That's what I knew. That's what I played my whole life. And it was it was a nice transition. I understood that side of it very well. The play, what people were looking for and whatnot. So
obviously you're into the infield dirt, but I have to ask the question: Are you a natural grass guy, or are you a plastic guy for the infield outfield?
1000% natural grass. We'll say that. Yes, if
Yeah.
you can go that high, it's
Yeah.
that's what we profess really at DuraEdge, and that's it. With the natural sand name of it is our goal is to let customers and clients and end users know that, hey, you can do it this way. There's no magic wand. There's no escaping from the maintenance and work, but you are able to have a high end field with a low budget and on the natural side of it.
Yeah.
And there's
Yeah.
it's so that's our battle. We're not going to erase synthetic as a whole, but we are going to just say, hey, you can do it on a natural sand or natural grass side and have success on it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's well, and I think that's a good way to approach it, is to say we can do this affordably.
Mm-hmm.
It's a superior surface. I mean, my son, you and I talked about this. My son played college ball, and he said, even as an outfielder, he could feel a difference in his joints between artificial and natural grass after a game. And that's not a 300-pound guy tackling him and hitting the ground with all that force behind him. But so I'm glad to hear that. That's good to hear.
Yep.
Okay, so we've moved on from Natural Sand Company. DuraEdge is named. Where is your material sourced? And I want to talk about kind of the science and the engineering behind it. And then one of the things that I'm always, anytime in the golf business, anytime you find a good sand source, my first question is how much inventory do you have? How much do you have access to? Are we going to run out? Because this is a really interesting thing for me with your engineered material. But if it isn't a plentiful source, now what? Right.
Well, I think that's the problem. I mean, isn't it, with our whole industry? I mean, we talked a little bit about artificial turf there. I mean, what have they been great at? They've been great at a one-stop shop. They've been great at selling warranties. They have changed the game by offering one administrator to school a solution to a problem that they have. And what is natural turf solution to the problem of building a field. I use this analogy, and I want you to think about this for a second. If you walk into SFMA and you've got, $2 million to spend on your facility and you're a school administrator, what's the one-stop shop you can walk up to say, I'll take care of it on a natural versus looking at artificial? You can walk up to 5 artificials and they're all one-stop shops, but you would have to go around to about 10 different people within SFMA to put together a design, a plan, and all the products and figure them all out yourself. And it's just not feasible. And I think that's one of the reasons why you've seen natural go out the window so rapidly, is that there hasn't been a company that stepped up and said, if you do it this way, we'll take care of it for you and we'll warranty it. And I think that was sort of the premise behind developing Foremost Sport Group, that Eric was really hired to help me get off the ground. That was a design and consulting company that's all based around turf professionals. It's not professional salespeople, or professional, business operators like myself. It's take the minds that are the best in our industry and make sure you have access to them, and you have a better chance for an outcome. So, Natural Sand Company evolved over time into DuraEdge products, which, from 2007 until really 2 years ago, our 100% focus was baseball and softball infield skins. I used to joke with all these head groundskeepers, I'm not your green grass guy. Like, that's not, what I noticed and how I developed a business in sports turf was I led with the infield skin because there was nobody talking about it. There were a lot of people talking about different ways of managing grass through, agronomics and fertilizers and top dressings and things like that. But you walk in talking about the infield skin, you could start, anybody that was managing a baseball field never turned me away, because they were having problems and they just didn't know what those problems were. They didn't know how to solve them. And so ultimately, we do everything by testing. I think that's probably been the biggest thing that I've done in our industry, is I say it's got to be verified with a private lab. Norm Hummel is my first lab person, that operator, that I interviewed a lot of them in the beginning because I didn't know what I was doing either. I mean, and this had to make sense. We weren't going to, create a snake oil. We were going to do this with real hard numbers. And it took some time to figure out the testing methods and how all that worked to make it replicable and predictable.
Yeah.
But that's what we did. And it starts with having good quality testing for your materials.
Yeah.
And I think that's been the basis of everything.
And those labs probably didn't know what they were looking for or what they were testing for to begin with either. So you were kind of building it from the ground up.
When you start talking about 2000, 2001 with the golf boom that was happening,
right?
I called multiple labs and I said, I want to test infield skin. They're like, no, we're too busy. We're not going to do that. It was Norm that said, yeah, I can do that. And so what I did in the beginning was I picked 3 labs, and I would send 1 bucket of material. I would send a sample out of the same bucket to all the different labs. I mean, how much can a bucket really vary? It's 1 bucket full of material.
It's the testing protocol that varies.
Exactly. And some of the labs were varying 4, 5, 6% in clay content.
Yeah.
Something wasn't right. Norm Hummel's, boom, right on the money every single time. And I chose him. And so we standardized all of our testing and, on Norm. And so what we started doing then was going out and looking at the soils that were out there that people were using and struggling with. And instead of just saying, hey, take that out and put this in and hope for the best, we would look at what they had, and then we would utilize our product to modify that product. And that's how we got into professional baseball. And, it was a slow start, but it worked. And the mineral, and you asked me about the mineral and the longevity of it. We found the mineral in Western Pennsylvania.
Okay.
It's a very specific geologic seam of material. It's, pretty much everybody knows where it is. We've had Wall Street Journal's been there and done an article on it. It's a very, very unique mineralogy, and it's got a nice longevity. We currently have 30 years worth of it in reserve. We're going to acquire a couple more farms. This is not a mineral that changes, and that's really the challenge when you work with soils. If you're going to take something that's a soil-based product, finding the consistency in it is difficult. And I do all my testing now with Andy McKnight and Tom Sorrentis at Serene Soil.
Okay.
And, I had some experiences doing that with trying to make 60-20-20s. You couldn't keep the porosities right. You couldn't do anything because the input of the soil it's impossible to keep it the same. So one of the things we learned with infield skin was we could take the same clay, mix it with a washed alluvial sand anywhere in the United States, and produce the exact same infield mix across the country. And to my knowledge, I'm the only person that produces a product that's identical, that's bulk product, that's sold as a bulk, that's identical, in 20 different locations around the United States. So consistency and longevity are the key to being able to continue to do this. And so far we're 20 years into it and still rolling and acquiring new reserves regularly.
Okay. So Eric, I'm going to put you on the spot since you said you weren't going to do much of the talking, but you work with, in the Western U.S., you work with a mutual friend again, Nathan Cox at Desert Green Turf. So Grant, that's an interesting point that I think needs to be underscored, is that only a portion of the mix originates from your mine. And so the rest of it, Eric, talk a little bit about that. Right. So, there's obviously a spec on the sand that's being utilized in the mix. What's the percentage? How do you guarantee that kind of consistency from location to location? And even backing up a little bit further, what's the process of incorporating these components?
Right. Well, so again, it's all off of testing, off of what Grant mentioned earlier.
Sure.
When we go to open up a new production facility across the country, that sand has to match our spec that we have found is what we're desiring and what makes our product the high-end product itself.
Yeah.
So, and that's how we're able to make it the same in Ogden, Utah, as in Vero Beach, Florida, and Pennsulvania, all the way down to Arizona.
And these are independent blenders or independent distributors, if you will, or
that's a local provider of the sand. So we don't truck our finished product from Pennsylvania to all these facilities. Sure. The clay comes in rail. And we do find a local sand source that matches everything that we're looking for. Okay. And then it's all developed and engineered and built with a pug mill that again is our design and it's same at each facility, and that produces our material, and that's how we're able to make our blends, our essentially our custom blends throughout the country.
So the pug mill is that's a kind of a standard blending machine, but then you've got computerization and different things that you built to customize that.
Yep. And that's where Grant's background on that. And he really developed that side of it, obviously, and said, hey, this is how we're going to do it. And he's got those dialed in. And here on the West, we have a pug mill. Nathan has his pug mill that stays stationary, but we have a mill that goes from Ogden to Phoenix to now Sacramento, and it just makes a triangle and travels whenever we make production runs. And we have other mixers that move throughout the country in the Midwest and down and in the Southeast as well. So we have a handful of these big iron contraptions moving around, making soil and making it by design on all of our facilities.
And then, like a golf course green construction, you guys are testing runs, I would assume, fairly frequently and consistently to make sure everything's working the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah. I mean, whenever we're producing in production runs, is sending into the lab, making sure that we're on. We know the numbers, we know, the machine's working, but we still have to, as a quality control, we still run everything even after, like, 15 or 20 years of doing it. We got to make sure that we stay honest with our material and making
Sure.
sure that it's being produced.
Yeah. So Grant, go back to the components and the percentages. I mean, how many different
Mhm.
products do you offer besides, and I'm trying to hold back on fusion for a little bit, but
Yeah.
besides that, infield skins, uh, I assume you've got a top dress, like I think you mentioned, maybe adding to what's already in the infield. Obviously, if there's a
Yeah.
renovation, you've got something different. So talk about that a little bit.
Well, we have 7 core products that come out of the clay mine. So we
Okay.
mine a clay that's 90% silt and clay. That's the mineral, and that's really the secret to to what we do. Um, the material that comes out of the mine is 90% silt and clay. By itself, it can't be used um, as an infield mix. And so we take that product, and we have developed over time our own blending capabilities. My original model for the business was to go out and find distributors to make the product for me. I would just sell them that raw material.
Hmm.
That model didn't work very well because I really struggled with quality control. I'm a quality. I think quality is all you got to hang your hat on at the
Right.
end of the day. The quality of the product and consistency thereof. And so over the last few years, I've ended up, taking back the distributorships that I put out there, and I manage all the production in-house, 100%. That's the only way we can truly control the quality of the product. And so the component is the raw material. We buy washed alluvial sand at the location, like Eric was saying.
Hmm.
Our operations team will drive in with one of our portable, we call them DuraMixers. We designed that mixer in 2011.
Okay.
We built 6 of them. One was sold to Nathan that you probably saw while you were up there. That was
Yep.
one of our first generation machines. We're on second gen machines now that are much larger and do a much higher volume of product in a shorter amount of time.
Okay.
But yeah, that's been we have 4 of those currently around the country, 2 stationary units, and that's how we cover the United States with material. We move in, we move out, we buy sand locally, we ship but all of the materials all originate with the same red clay. So at every location, all 20 locations we produce materials at, we logistically get the red clay from the mine in Slippery Rock to that location, and then we buy sand locally and add them together. And that model is what's allowed us to do this. If you had to ship sand across the United
Forget it.
States,
Yeah.
forget it. It's not
Yeah.
happening. So from an infield mix perspective, because the volumes are lower on an infield, we've been able to have locations set up and develop them over time, and then we'll ship the finished infield mix product from that location to the uh, to the job site. In rare occasions with infields, because we have the portable nature of these mixers, we're able to go directly to a job site if it's big enough to do that. So, for 3 to 4 thousand tons of material, it's much more cost effective for us to take the mixer and do it. We call them
Sure.
DuraMixer jobs, where we go on site, much like they do golf green construction. I mean,
Yeah.
that's how Greensmix, Wapaka, these types of companies that make root zones, they'll either go to the sand plant or they'll go directly to the job site and mix that root zone and do the testing right there. It keeps freight costs down.
Yep.
And
Yep.
because we have a 4 portable machines, we're able to do just that. So we can take advantage of freight where the volumes of the jobs are big enough in the infield side to be able to go directly to the job site, which really helps us a lot.
Yeah. Freight's
So,
everything. I mean, we struggle with the
oh
same thing. It's just a killer.
yeah,
Um, so give me an idea on perspective. So you say 4 to 5 thousand tons makes it worth bringing the machine to the job site. If I were building a brand new Major League Baseball size facility, how much volume are you talking to do that with the warning track, with the infield and the whole thing? what is that? I don't even
Well,
know.
yeah, I mean, to a baseball field, brand new construction, 90-foot base path field is about 350 tons of material. That's
Okay.
all the DuraEdge it takes.
Okay.
Warning tracks are not made through our mixers. Those are a different animal in and of itself.
Got it.
They're not produced there, so they don't have any bearing on that. So one job, like if I'm building a new ballpark, it's not a job big enough to be able to do on site. Typically, the last major on-site job we did was in Fort Smith, Arkansas, very remote area, long ways from St. Louis. They were building 6 fields, I believe. There was around 3,000 tons or so there of material, and just economically, where they wouldn't have been able to afford the freight for the DuraEdge infield mix, we were able to
Right.
go there, buy the sand, and cut 30-40% of the cost out. We made budget.
Okay.
That's an example of what we would do in more remote areas.
Okay. All right. That makes sense. Yeah, it's a constant battle for us. All of our production is East Coast based right now, and
Mhm.
to get a truckload of our material to California is, half of its freight by the time it gets there, or close
Mhm.
to it. It's a killer. So 7 products. Why 7? For a guy who
Yeah.
doesn't run the base paths very often anymore, I
Yeah.
would think that one size would fit all, but apparently that's not the case.
Now the 7 core products, they're not. I mean, we have 4 products that are used as amendments. They're called field saver products.
Okay.
And we have 3 core infield mix products: DuraEdge Professional, DuraEdge Collegiate, and DuraEdge Classic.
Okay.
And what we learned very quickly was one size doesn't fit all. When
Okay.
I first started looking at skins, I would, I'd have professional guys that didn't like their infield skin. We'd test it and find that they were on 75% sand content. We'd have little leagues that thought their infield was too hard and they were at 55% sand content. So one of the first things we did was start getting people into a little more narrow range of, hey, where should your overall sand content be? From a standpoint of let's get you there first, and we'll have a better chance for success. So yeah, one size doesn't fit all when it comes to infield mix. A lot of
Sure.
specs for infield mix were, you know, 50 to 80% sand content when you first saw them when they're coming out. That's way too wide of a range. You're not going to be able to, cover the gambit with that. That's not going to work. So let's narrow our focus a bit more here, understand who we are and
Hmm.
what our facility maintenance resources and practices are, and let's build you a skin around the level of play you want to play. And that's been our philosophy now for 20 years. And it's from an infield skin perspective, it's really got people understanding where they need to be. That standard is there now.
Yeah.
One of the big things we talked about was silt to clay ratio.
Hmm.
That
Hmm.
in 2009, we needed a way to classify different infield skins, especially for architects, without I was bound and determined it wasn't going to be a complicated mathematical procedure that you needed an abacus to figure out. I mean, I just started
Sure.
looking, and in 2006, 7, and 8, I started collecting soil samples from all around the country. Just anybody that would send me theirs in, I would look at it and I would ask them, did they like it? Did they not? How did they work? And the one thing I could tell you is the people that overwhelmingly had a lot of problems had their silt ratio was higher than their clay ratio.
Hmm.
And the people that were generally happier, including those that were using DuraEdge, and there's a handful of natural clay products around the country that have higher clay contents and silt contents. And I just noticed, okay, well, basically everybody that said they were genuinely satisfied were less than 1, and everybody that said that they were not real happy were 2 or greater. So it kind of told you that maybe we need to shoot for getting the silt to clay ratio right off the bat. So a lot of our field saver products are designed to fix that silt to clay ratio problem. And as soon as we do, we see an instant change in how the performance of the field is. So there was soil science behind it right away.
Yeah. So the silt to clay, I mean, that to me would mean that's exclusive, or that's specific to the source, right? Or are you combining those two components into the material, I guess the clay material that you're mixing with the sand?
Well, I always say you can add clay and you can add sand, but you can't add silt. Doesn't work that way. Silt is, there's only three components to the soil, right? Sand,
Right.
silt, and clay.
Yeah.
Silt's the hardest one to control.
Huh.
So
Why?
because we can find materials that are higher in clay content, and you can obviously add sand,
Sure.
but there's no place in the world you're going to go just to add silt. I mean, it doesn't.
Interesting.
You don't want to do that anyway. I mean,
Yeah.
and so what ends up happening is we sit and look at to balance an infield. What we call a balanced infield is essentially balancing the silt and the clay. So
Okay.
and getting turf managers to understand the soil fractions between and sizing fractions between a silt particle and a clay particle. I'll go to these conferences and I'll say, silt is 50 micron to 2 micron.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Clay is 2 micron to infinity.
Right.
So these infields that are dusty and sloppy when they're wet, silt particles are going to, especially coarser silt, are going to give up moisture. They're going to play dustier. You need to have your clay particle bind to your silt particle. So it stands to reason that if you have more clay particles than silt particles, they'll kind of combine around that and
Right.
and pack together. The standard procedure when I started in the infield skin, there was a company pushing a methodology of you need all sand and all clay and no silt. And as a construction materials guy, that made no sense to me, because it's kind of like building a road with 3/4 stone and 1/4-inch stone and leaving out the 1/2-inch stone.
It's never
like
going to
it
lock
doesn't make
together.
any sense. It's
Yeah.
not going to pull together.
Yep.
So it's and you'll see that with these southern mixes. You up and down the East Coast into Florida, you'll get these orange clays in Georgia and the Carolinas. They're what people always thought of as traditional infield mix. They have a very low silt to clay ratio, sometimes 0.1, 0.2. They get very hard and then they chunk out. Those are the people there that'll be like, my infield mix chunks out on me all the time. You get big chunks of clay that'll fly off.
Yeah.
And we had that problem with the New York Mets. That was the complaint from Bill Deacon at the Mets in 2006, who ironically Eric used to work for. Or work with, I don't know it's for, but he worked with him in LA. And I said, Bill, I think your material needs more silt. He goes, I think the same thing. And so we took our clay, I had no idea. I was a mad scientist, but I was working with trained soils guys that were like, this makes, soil science sense. So let's try it.
Yeah.
And so we went in and we tilled it in, and overnight he saw a complete difference. We actually raised the silt to clay ratio closer to 0.5, and we saw a better performance and less chunking out of the infield. And that became a term that, chunking out, when somebody says things are chunking, that means that the clay content's higher than the silt content. Always does. If things are sloppy and dusty, it means the silt to clay's too high. So what's been really unique about our products are we've been able, in the infield skin world, we've been able to add those products to soils that have too high a clay content. We increase the medium sand, we get them to play better. In places where silt to clay ratio is high, we add those exact same products and bring that silt to clay ratio down. That infield skin becomes more manageable. So that field savoring process is what got us on the map. It really was the start of it. Is behind all that, and the predictability of what was going to happen was very, we were really happy about. So,
but like you said, it goes back to the data collection that the database that you build. I mean, now you've got the numbers, it's going to, if it's X and your goal is Y, we know how to get there. So Eric, let me ask you, you're out on a field visit. You're here in Coeur d'Alene and you're meeting with the Little League. Their fields are a mess, which I can vouch for. you would pull a sample of that
Mhm.
field, of that
Yep.
infield, and then
Yep.
you'd kind of write a prescription or a recipe
Yep.
that could modify what's there and not have to completely throw the baby out with the bathwater. Is that
Yeah, exactly. Grant likes it, he always said anybody can go nuclear. Anybody can rebuild the field, but
sure?
can you fix? Can you repair what's there? Budget conscious,
Uh-huh.
you only have so much money, time, et cetera.
Right.
But yeah, so I ask a lot of questions. Well, how does it react after rain? How does it react during rain? Does it play better 2 days after rain? Does it
Hmm.
immediately dry up? What are the conditions and what are some complaints that you're seeing? So we'll grab a sample, we'll send it into the lab, and we have a database internally called DirtU that we use for training and keeping a lot of soil tests and clients and customers in that database, and we'll plug it into there. We'll plug in the numbers that we're given off of that soil test, and it'll come up with a prescription, and we'll give that to the customer and say, hey, this is our recommendations, and this is why, not just what, but why,
Yeah.
and this is what you can see, what you will benefit off of by doing this field saver process, whether it's a field saver 50, 60, or sometimes, we're fortunate and we just have to bring the medium sand content up, so we don't have to go in with the field saver 60. We can just go with the pro, and what there's three particles that make up the infield mix: sand, silt, and clay. But we don't just look at that. We also look at what's in that sand content, like what analysis, what size of sand is in there
Sure.
too.
Of course.
So it's not just the three parts; it's parts within the parts.
Yep.
And, and again, it's a lot of times where I can speak with Coeur d'Alene Little League over the phone and just give them, ask them questions. They'll give me a bunch of information. We'll know even without testing.
Without
We'll still
testing.
always test.
Yeah.
We'll still know, like, hey, we can probably come in with this, at least give you an idea of what you're looking for. But we've gotten so many soil tests and aggregate infields to sandy infields to the bit where we can diagnose a lot of stuff just by over the phone and a site walk as well.
So do you typically have to remove some material to get the amendment into the infield or not necessarily?
It depends. So
Depends on how much, I guess.
remove the infield, like the top dressing, the conditioner, the calcine clays on there, because you don't
Yeah.
want that mixing up, because that just break down and really contaminate some of your soil. But it depends on if they're an inch low or more than an inch low. But if they're on grade, we can come in with a truckload or two of material without affecting elevations too much.
Okay.
But if it's too deep, if it's washed out, if it's an inch and a half, then it's not budget, conscious to do a field saver process. We can just do a what we call a 2-inch cap on top of that infield with our material that we prescribe for them and their maintenance practices and what they're able to do.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. It's really interesting. There's I think anybody outside of the industry doesn't realize the science that's gone into this and how much data collection you guys have done over the years. It's pretty fascinating.
I'll even say there's people within the industry too that doesn't even understand what even DuraEdge is about and what Grant has really developed on the science behind the maintenance of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll
Well,
tell you a funny story there about that. It's reminding me back. Field Saver 90 is 90% silt and clay, so it's 90% minus 50 micron. George Toma, we all know
Mhm.
George.
Sure.
George called me and he said, "I hope this product," because I was advertising Field Saver 90 in Florida. And George, to his credit, he called me on the phone and he said, "I hope this fixes the bad infields in Florida." And I brought this thing down. I brought the product down to them, and I told them specifically, the people that were putting it in, this is a full truckload, 25 tons of material. This will not raise your grade at all. And they put the product in, and I got down, I see George, and I said, "George, how are we doing?" He goes, "We got big problems, Grant. This thing's too low. It's not working." And I was like, doggone it. And I went over and I said, I told you this wasn't going to raise grade. He goes, I thought you were crazy. He said, there's no way I put 25 tons out here. He goes, where did it all go? I said, it's 90% minus 50 micron. All we're
All the
doing is
pores.
filling in void space.
Yep.
That's all we're
Yep.
doing.
Yep.
And that was the big revelation. You have to start working, these pro infields that are very close to grade, you can come in and manipulate them very easily.
Mm-hmm.
When you go to a recreational field that's an inch low, we've had to develop different ways. We sell modified caps where we'll modify the base, and then because we don't want to create layering, just like in
Right.
agronomics in the golf green. I don't want a layer of infield materials. They don't perform well.
Right.
So we have to work with the equipment to make sure that we're blending you at least 3 homogeneously blended inches of infield. We don't need 6.
Okay.
We don't need 8. We need 3. And we've kind of proven that over the years that if you use engineered soil technology, you need less of it. And it stands to reason. If we're buying asphalt or concrete, we're putting it in 3 or 4 inches thick.
Yep.
If you're going to put a gravel road down, you need to put it a foot thick because it's just not structurally stable. And I think that was kind of always the mindset. We need 6 or 8 inches of infield when I started into this. And you don't need 8 inches of DuraEdge. And we're very proud. Eric mentioned a 2-inch cap. I mean, that is probably, of all the things that we've done and proven our way along, I mean, we have thousands of 2-inch caps over top of really poor performing infields that never move. And that's saying something. When you're playing at a recreational level on 2 inches of material and you can maintain that properly, it's a real true testament to soil science. And when you put things together properly, they stay there.
Yeah.
And that's really what we're trying to do, is give you something with some longevity to it.
What's the method of incorporation if you're doing that 2-inch amendment? What do you recommend?
Ahead,
is it a rototiller? Is it a
So if we're amending a product, we're doing a reverse time rototiller on that. That's what homogenizes. That's what gets the material together better, right? And so add a 2 to 3 inch depth, like Grant was saying, But if we're just capping an infield of a poor performing infield that we have a 2-inch void that we can fill, we'll laser grade that poor performing surface, and then we will just cap our material right on top of it. We don't incorporate. We basically seal it off.
Yep. It's a new medium that you're playing.
Yeah, we can, as long as we have a stable surface underneath, we can put 2 inches down. But if you're dealing with the soil right off the bat, that's say a silt to clay ratio of 3 or 4, that's really punky when it gets wet, what we'll do is we'll do a 2-inch mod on that. And we'll just to be safe, we'll go in and we'll throw some field saver and modify that bottom 3 inches. And then we'll come in over top and put the 2-inch cap on top of it, just to make sure that the base doesn't start moving underneath. If you got it's just like anything else. If you put, asphalt down over top of pudding, the asphalt's not going to last long. So, you got to have everything. All products are only as good as the base that they're put over. And I kind of learned that back in my construction materials days, that, you want to build it on the right foundation. And if the foundation's solid, you got no problem. But if the foundation isn't solid, you have an issue. So it doesn't matter what you put down.
Interesting. Totally makes sense. Totally makes sense. So in some cases, it might be a 2-step process to get you the.
It is.
The end
it can
result.
be.
Yeah,
it can be. Yeah.
All right. So I want to shift gears because this is what really piqued me to reach out to you guys and get you on. But Fusion, kind of your newest offering. Am I correct on that?
Yeah. I guess I'll kick this one off because, I got to start, Kevin, telling you, I can't believe I'm doing this, but
you're back.
We're back. I mean,
full circle.
I mean, I was, you got to realize DuraEdge, and I think this goes with to triangulate how this has all come together. I started in the construction materials business and I learned how to make asphalt and concrete mix designs. That's how you achieve strength in concrete, strength in asphalt. I did it for, 7 or 8 years. I then switched gears and Andy McKnight kind of taught me the ins and outs of USGA guidelines for root zones.
Sure.
And I understood porosities. I understood sand fractioning, and how DuraEdge, the engineered soil, came together was what I learned out of concrete and asphalt mix designs and creating void space and filling void space. In asphalt, you fill void space with liquid AC, and in concrete, you fill void space with cement. Well, all we're doing on the infield skin side is creating void space and filling it with the proper clay with the right silt to clay ratio. In a root zone, you're filling that void space with what? Air and water entrainment, right? That's it, your capillary aeration. So you're filling it. You're always filling void. So your sand, whatever your medium is that you're working with, has to be designed as to have enough void space in it that you're going to achieve the goals that you want, right? And so I learned balanced aeration porosities, balanced porosities between air and capillary. I learned uniformity coefficients. I understood all these things, and that's what developed infield skin. And thinking that was where I was going to be my whole life, I have to give credit to two people here for Fusion, and it's really not me. I had a wonderful relationship with a guy in our industry who's not really in it, so to speak now. His name's Terry Driscoll in Boston, and Dennis Brolin, who I still work with every day. He was former head groundskeeper for the Patriots. They did a tennis court about 7 years ago, somewhere in the greater New England area. And they used our clay as the growing medium. Unbeknownst to me, I had no idea. They just took it and put it to a grass tennis court.
Okay.
And Dennis calls me up and he goes, "This is unbelievable." He said, what we're seeing in terms of agronomics and, as a groundskeeper, this is completely unheard of. I'm like, yeah. Whatever, Dennis. He goes, you need to do something with this. I said, Dennis, I'm busier than one arm paper hanger. I do not have time to get back into root zones, right? Well, he just pesters and pesters and pesters me to stay up with this. He put test plots in, and he's like, you got to come up here and see these things. You got to come up and see them. And so, he kept piquing my interest, and being the guy that I am, I mean, I told you, I said, what was our mission here was to create a one-stop shop for natural playing surfaces. I mean, we're pretty well pigeonholed in baseball and softball. We don't do much in the rectangle world at all. We didn't do anything in the rectangle world. Yeah. But if our mission at foremost and as an industry is to move the natural playing surface option forward, I felt I owed it to myself to at least experiment with this a little bit.
Well, and you're not starting from ground zero either.
No, it was easy to do because I already had all the basis of all this behind me. So, long story short, I waited. COVID hit. This all happened well before COVID, and COVID just stopped everything in the sports turf industry. Didn't really stop anything in the golf turf industry, but the sports turf industry took a hell of a hit. I mean, there was no money to do anything if you were in sports turf. So a lot of our initiatives were kind of held off to the side. But this was one that we came back to. And in COVID, I have several agronomic professionals working for me. I have 3 former head groundskeepers in Major League Baseball. I had 2. Patrick Coakley has recently gone back into the industry again, but he and Eric. And when we had time during COVID, I had all these guys put their heads together, and I said, look, if we're going to do this root zone thing, if we're going to do it, I am absolutely adamant that it's not going to be Grant McKnight coming out and telling people I'm in the root zone mix business because, now it's I want this to be a product that's built and endorsed by turf professionals. period. End of
Okay.
subject.
Yep.
That was my directive to these guys was I'm not going to start this for you. If you want to start the testing, I'll give you the money to do it, but I want it done correctly. We're not going to come
Sure.
out with some wild snake oil that's going to wildly vary from the USGA and say this is the right way to do this. We're not going to gain any traction or credibility doing that. So those were the directives. We were able to utilize COVID downturn in our business, and I poured a lot of money, and specifically PPE money that we were getting from the end of, okay, what can we do positive with our people rather than sitting at home and watching the guiding light? You know, I mean, that's which is what the rest of the world was doing. But I mean, we tried to do, and that was challenged to do, to be honest with you. The whole world shut down. So it was keeping people motivated to do something different was unique. But hey, look, they came up with something that interested me. I decided to go ahead and launch the product line. We've done a couple of projects. We've, smaller projects. We saw some really good success with it. But I knew what I was getting into, because if we did these things, I'm the only one in the company that's ever tested a full root zone project from start to finish. And I am absolutely a fanatic about it. And we were just laughing. We were in Sacramento this weekend, and one of my operators tried to take some of my root zone before it was tested, and I about lopped his head off, because if we're gonna do this, we're gonna do it right. And so it starts with the right baseline testing, go out, calibrate the plant in the field, and then every 500 tons we're sending the QC reports in. And so all that had to be, our people didn't really know how to do that. Luckily I did, because I already had, and that's what made it was pretty easy for me, because I started the business. I just had to dust off a few of the notes from a few years ago.
Right.
But all in all, I mean, my job for these guys is, look, if you go out and sell it and you get behind it as a group of turf professionals, what I'll guarantee is it'll be made right. And that's really how it's gone. I mean, I love doing it. I mean, I to see the success and the consistency. I remember I used to pull my hair out trying to make a 60-20-20 consistently. I mean, literally pull my hair out. And I had some of the finest Pennsylvania topsoil that there was to work with.
Yep.
And I'm telling you, every single test I'd send in, Hummel would send it back and be like, this doesn't pass. I'm like, what the hell are you supposed to do? I mean, this is crazy.
That was totally the light bulb moment for me when I realized, okay, this is a known spec on a component of a soil, and the USGA's had that in their spec for decades, that there can be a soil component in a USGA spec mix, but the question has always been, where the heck do we find it?
What soil?
Exactly.
Where do we find a consistent product? And Eric and I have talked a couple of times. Nathan and I have talked. I mean, this is a known commodity, and now we can blend it. I mean, that was a complete watershed moment for me. And of course, being with my golf background, I went right to, and I've been in the Western US basically my whole career, starting in Colorado and Arizona. And I don't need, we talked about this yesterday, I don't need 30 inches an hour of percolation. I don't get 30 inches in a year. And I haven't in the last 30 years. So, for us in the West, I mean, it completely makes sense. And if you've got a quality control product like you do, do you expect, or do you hope you can break into the golf market?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I'll say that very apprehensively, because look, if I do anything, Kevin, it's done right. And I mean, do I think we can? Yeah. Do I think we need to tool up? Do I think we need to change the businesses? Yeah. And that's what we're working on as a company right now. I mean, we're going through some branding for Fusion, some trademarking. We're pulling Fusion directly out of DuraEdge products. It'll be owned by the DuraEdge Corporation.
Okay.
But it's not going to be under. This is something that's very important for me, and I think the listeners need to understand this. I mean, we've developed DuraEdge products and everything for the baseball and softball industry. We're not trying to shift that company into a root zone company. That company, DuraEdge Products, needs to remain an industry leader in baseball and softball infield skins. Fusion, I'd like to see be a leader in the sports turf and golf turf root zone market. Two completely separate entities whatsoever. Because I think you need separate professionals to operate it. I think we've tooled up and we've got a lot of people well trained on infield skins. I don't think it's realistic to take somebody that's trained to the infield skin side and turn around and ask them to sell root zones. I really don't. So I think there's a lot to do here.
Yeah.
And you gotta crawl before you walk and walk before you run. I would say if I enter the golf market right now, I'm in a full sprint because that's a big market.
Yeah.
We want to make sure we can hit it and do it well, because when golf course superintendents start to realize that they can put a consistent soil-based product in, that they can dry the top out, they're not going to get black layer, and they're going to hold 25% moisture down consistently, 8 or 10 inches, and you're going to have a CEC of 10 to 14, cut your water in half,
right?
Cut your fertilization costs in half. Yeah, I mean, if what we're seeing in Sacramento right now, and I think Fusion is, if it's going to take off anywhere, it's going to start right where you are in the West, because water is such a premium.
100%.
I just had dinner with the head groundskeeper and the higher ups at Sacramento. I mean, look, we put this in 1 year in Sacramento and their water bill's down half.
So you should explain. So this is the Sacramento River Cats, who are hosting this year the former Oakland A's in their transition to Las Vegas, right?
Yeah.
And so you did a complete reno of the entire facility.
Yeah, down to the drainage layer. We worked with Moats Group and AirPat. We put an complete AirPat system in. They came to us and said, look, this is going to happen. We want this field built properly. And one of the big components I pushed was Fusion. And look, the number one question you get in life, Kevin, is where is it? It's never been anywhere at this high level of high profile. Major League Baseball's involved with it. Minor League Baseball's involved. Look, ultimately they trusted and they went with it. And we look at where we are this year. I was just there last week. I was there for the first game of the season and the last games of the season. And we were scheduled to replace that field twice.
Right.
That was at the direction of the league.
Yep.
We needed to have 2 complete fields backed up. We played, 162 games in 170 days or something like that.
They played 2 full home seasons because the minor league team was there as well.
Yeah. Yeah. We did not replace 1 square foot of sod. The edges are unbelievable.
And why?
If you ask Chris Shassid from the head groundskeeper, he says the only thing that's different is the Fusion.
Yeah.
I mean, you have watered glass, getting the density of the turf. We were able to transition from a overseeded Tahoma 31 to we're 95% Tahoma. We're spraying it out this week right now, and we're gonna leave the sod down. The density of the sod there, we're gonna grow that Tahoma back in, use the air patch system to heat the root zone, and bring that thing back to back to life. I mean, to do this without any sod replacement, I mean, that in my wildest dreams, I didn't think that was going to happen. So, where do we go from here? Just a reduction in water alone is a big cost savings out west.
But reduction is one piece of the puzzle to me. But the fact that you're able to maybe more consistently manage, like you said, the volumetric water content from day to day and irrigation to irrigation is, Major League ball players are relatively particular about their conditions, wouldn't you say? I mean, if you can give them a better consistency, and golfers are no different. That's a huge leap forward.
And I think, one thing, Chris and I spoke about a little bit too, is he didn't have to overmanage it because of all the games.
Right.
He could just let grass grow. right? If that makes sense, right? Sometimes as turf managers and as superintendents, we try to force the issue a little bit. Well, we got this tournament, we got this homestand, we got this coming up, so we overdo it. He was able to underdo it, and he had great success because of the profile of the base was performing.
I'm sure he's thankful that was the case, because there's no way he would have been able to access it.
Yeah, he had 8 days off to be able to do maintenance.
Unreal.
And like Grant was saying, the CECs that in 7 months of that field down, the last soil test report of August 15th was the CECs was at 9.8. In a sand field. I was in Reno for 7 years, and the highest I ever got mine was 3.2. Yeah, and that was pure sand with a little bit of peat mixed in it.
The interesting thing that you shared the test with me, the interesting thing that I noticed is, and this is a real paradigm shift again for my mentality, is that the organic matter percentages are really pretty low. But again, you've got that clay and silt component introduced. To me, as a turf manager, if I wasn't at 1%, which is typical for a new construction, it was a roller coaster ride all the time. Water management, fertility management was a freaking nightmare. But that's because we didn't have that clay and that soil component in there. So are you not as hung up on OM percentages because you've got that soil in there?
My original thought pattern here's how I originally thought, and I think this still may be for if you get into golf turf consistently. If a superintendent wants to create his own blend, I think, the options are out there to add organic matter if you want to. I think what we've done here in the short term, because in sports turf, money's always a big deal. Like, look, we got to keep this root zone at a reasonable cost. We can't just blow this thing out into nothing. Right. So, or out of the water in terms of, in terms of cost. So we've sort of proven that, hey, just sand and just fusion clay, mixed properly creates a balanced, a balanced aeration where we porosities and capillary porosity. We always want a little more air than cap to start out with. We're putting a lot of our mixes in at 10 inches. So we do all of our testing at 25 centimeters tension. That's why I will not sell fusion less than 10. I've been asked to do, 6s and 8s, and I just won't do it. I'm not going to jeopardize the brand. We're going to go with what the testing says is going to work, period. If you can't afford 10 inches, then, you put an 8-inch straight sand in. I don't know I'm just deathly afraid that we're going to have a failure of some sort. And I don't want to skimp to cut costs. And so standardization of 10 inches on sports turf, that's what we're doing everything with. I don't think it would be a problem if a golf course superintendent wanted to blend, 5% peat in with it. If they want to take a reed sedge or any type of organic matter and put it in there, we have the capabilities of doing that. Yeah. We're actually doing a project right now where we're introducing biochar. You familiar with biochar at all?
Sure, of course.
We're introducing biochar to the first fusion root zone for sports turf as we speak.
Yeah.
So we're starting to work with different ways to change bulk density and tweak it. Could you put a profile, an root zone amendment in there if you wanted to increase your porosities? Yeah, I think my vision for this always was as a turf manager, a superintendent, or a groundskeeper, you could take the best of everything that's there. Add a soil component, add an organic component, add an RZA to it, and but you got to start with the right sand. If you don't have the right sand, you're dead in the water, know? So find the right sand and custom make what it is you're looking for.
Right.
And, if you want a little more organic matter, put a little more in. It hasn't necessarily proven that it's been a detriment to this point. Because I was really hung up on the OM. What you asked for in the beginning, I'm like, the OMs aren't high enough based upon what I remember from my days of making root zone mix. The OMs weren't high enough. to get us where we needed to be.
Well, and
But
I think the reason we've always thought about that is because we didn't have this soil component that was consistent enough. So
Mhm.
we had to bump the OM just to get some holding capacity, or in our minds, that was what we were doing. But man, the cost of reed sedge peat right now, you could offset the cost of,
well,
and we talk about that with our amendments, between Ecolite and Renovate Plus, we talk about that all the time, though. I can offset the cost of peat and give you something that's lasting, just like your clay
mhm.
component, and it's going to be
Yeah.
there for the long haul.
Yeah. And I think that's going to be the evolution as our machines are built to produce sand and clay and put the two together at a very high rate.
Right.
What I think is going to wind up happening is we're going to be developing additional pieces of equipment that if you get into golf and you get into more specialized blending, where you're going to be able to put root zones, earthworks, organics, something in. A
Right.
superintendent's just going to want it in there right from the beginning.
Yep.
So you need to have that. And I'm already starting to think about, okay, how do you design a small unit that you pull on a trailer that's got much smaller, feed hoppers to it that you can set up with this main component and run the whole thing
Multiple.
in conjunction with each
Yeah.
other. I
Yeah.
mean, none of that's been done yet. I got ahead of myself, as I always do, and probably started thinking about that a little too early. And
Right.
Luke Yoder and Paul Zawaska, and Eric are like, let's crawl before we walk here, and
Yeah.
let's prove that we've even got something that's consistent. And I think step one's done. We know we can make something that's cost effective. You mentioned reed sedge. I mean, look, we're competitive right now at what we call Fusion 10, with around a 10% by volume blend. We're very competitive with a 90-10 reed sedge
Right.
blend. From
I
what I
believe that.
see around the country,
Yeah.
we're very competitive. There's not a big difference between the two. Now you want to get into some lower quality OMs, you get into sand and compost mixes. Those can get really funky and
Right.
and very,
Right.
very low price. We see those down south, but I don't know what you're getting there, so I really don't consider that an apples for apples comparison. But man, it's definitely, I see a component of this of being able to do more custom mixing if we get into golf.
Right.
And I think one step at a time. We need to do some testing. We need to understand how it works in that. I'm very open. We've thrown some samples out of the Sacramento location we just opened. We put some samples to some courses in the Tahoe area. I know there's a lot of interest in looking at it. What's the right way to do it? I don't know. Waiting for somebody to come out and ask. I mean, I'm open to the concept. I just want to make sure that I can control it if it goes poof,
I'll tell you, the first place I'd put it if it were on my golf course would be on tees, because they're the most neglected area. And from what I've learned already, it just sounds like you could make those autopilot and not even worry about them anymore.
Yeah. Building a good tee mix out of what we've done now for the sports turf would be a no-brainer.
Totally makes sense.
And it would, be a no-brainer.
All right. Well, shoot, we've already, I kind of figured we'd go a little bit long with this one. This is fascinating. I'm going to have you guys back, because I think there's a real future in it for more than just baseball fields. I think it's you're onto something pretty exciting.
Wow.
How does somebody get a hold of you or find out more about your company? What kind of contact info? DuraEdge.com, is that your website?
Yeah, currently it's DuraEdge.com. I mean, we'll be putting a lot more information out here in the coming weeks around Fusion.
Okay.
I mean, we're doing 3 more Fusion projects this year. I mean, did one in Sacramento last year. I didn't really know, things would take off. 3 more projects this year. There's going to be a lot more information around that.
Good. Okay, well, I'm going to wrap up since I've gone over time, but this has been absolutely awesome. I appreciate both you guys, Grant McKnight and Eric Blanton, with DuraEdge and 6 other companies. I really appreciate your guys' time. stick around for a minute, but for those of you listening, thanks again. I know this isn't golf yet, but I think it may actually interest some of you guys in the golf side of the business. But for you sports turf nuts, hopefully this was either confirmation of what you're doing or maybe something new that you haven't heard about. So I appreciate everybody listening, and we'll see you again next week.
Thank you, Kevin.